Director, let me go back to where Mr. Bishop was. Tell me about the drone. You act like you wanted to fill us in on that. Fill us in.
So we have recovered a drone that the shooter appears to have used. It's being exploited and analyzed by the FBI lab. The drone was recovered in his vehicle. So at the time of the shooting, the drone was in his vehicle with the controller. In addition, our investigation has uncovered.
Do you know what time of day he flew it, and if he flew it on the day of the shot?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in addition, it appears that around 3:50 p.m., 4 o'clock in that window, on the day of the shooting, that the shooter was flying the drone around the area
2 hours.
for about 11 minutes. I want to be clear, but when I say the area, not over the stage and that part of the area itself, but I would say about 200 yards, give or take, away from that. We think, but we do not know, so again, this is one of these things that's qualified because of our ongoing review, that he was live streaming, viewing the footage from that, again, about 11 minutes in around the 3:50, 4 o'clock p.m. range.
2 hours before, he's flying a drone in the vicinity of the route.
About 200 yards away, yes.
Yards. Okay, that's important information. What about the bombs that we've heard about in the shooter's car?
So again, the FBI lab is exploiting those explosive devices.
Yep.
There were, we've recovered 3 devices, 2 in his vehicle and 1 back in his residence.
Are these what you would call, your experts would call sophisticated operations, or this? I don't know. That's what I've been told by people who have some understanding of this area.
Yeah, I think it's. We've seen more sophisticated and less. I would say these are relatively, again, keyword relatively crude devices themselves, but they did have the ability to be detonated remotely. And so to that point, in addition to the 2 devices that we recovered out of his vehicle, there were receivers for those 2 explosive devices with the devices. And then on the shooter himself, when he was killed by law enforcement, he had a transmitter with him. Now, I do want to add one important point here, is at the moment, it looks to us, again, ongoing review, and I can't say that too many times, at a moment, it looks like because of the on-off position on the receivers, that if he had tried to detonate those devices from the roof, it would not have worked. But that doesn't mean the explosives weren't dangerous.
And I'm sure we're going to get into all these subjects a little bit later as well. Tell us what you can about the encrypted platforms we've heard about.
So one of the things that we're drilling into hard with the shooter in an effort to try to learn more about his state of mind, his motive, his ideology, his context, everything else, is to look at all of his devices, any social media accounts he had, et cetera. And one of the things we've learned in finally getting into his phone, which was also a significant technical challenge from an encryption perspective, but in addition, once we got on the phone, it turned out he was using some encrypted messaging applications.
And again, the same question relative to the bombs. Was this pretty sophisticated, or is this is the kind of the norm you see with folks like, similar situation? How would you describe
on this subject, I would say this has unfortunately now become very commonplace, and it's a real challenge for not just the FBI, but state and local law enforcement all over the state.
Tell me exactly the scope of, does the scope of your investigation include what I call that critical 5 minutes from when the 6:09, when this is based, I think, on information you've given to Congress, 6:09 when the shooter's identified on the roof, and 6:14 when President Trump is ultimately escorted off, and all that happens, the shots that take place in between there. Do you have access to the communications that were going on at the time in that critical 5 minutes?
So our investigation, when you say scope, our investigation includes that time frame, although focused again on the shooter himself and his day.
Now, shooter's involved in that. He's obviously involved in that time frame.
Correct, and as part of that, as part of our focus, our investigation of the shooter and the attack, of course, we are interviewing law enforcement from the scene, because those are some of the most significant witnesses, and we're obviously getting access to their materials and that kind of thing, and the Secret
You're
Service has
getting
been
access
fully
to
cooperative.
you have access to the communications that exist there.
That exact question, I don't, as I sit here at the moment, I don't know the exact answer to that question, but I know that Secret Service has been cooperative with us.
The Congress would like access to those communications as well. I mean, not just that 5 minutes, although I think that's the critical time frame. There's lots of communications we'd love to have access as well. I see my time is up, and they have called votes on the floor. I think there are about 6 minutes.